So let's be honest, a lot of us haven't exactly taken the shine to Breeze that we would have liked to very early on. In fact, most of the time, whenever people see that absolutely treacherous starting screen, people start to lose their minds on the spot. But the question people gotta ask is, what about Breeze makes it such a different map? What makes people have to change up their playstyles completely? The answer is, quite obviously, the fact that it's just so open. So first of all, I'm going to look at it from the defending point of view. Holding sight, I find on Breeze, is definitely not easy. When you play up against most different lineups, you'll find that any sort of a flash, any sort of a recon dart can really just give away your position and really leave you caught with your pants down at the worst time possible. Step one, I find, to defending on Breeze is not holding a line too high up. I'm going to show you what I mean by a line too high up. Some people may like to play at a close angle like this. Okay, of course I'm playing here with only a classic in hand. Some people might like to play just a small off angle on the right hand side, nice and close. Very little cover, very little place for you to kind of cover yourself up. You will be exposed, you will die almost immediately. Another place which isn't exactly the best to use when defending is the left. This is from the left side when you're entering on attack. This side here, although you do have the cover of this wall, will naturally be where a lot of utility will be done. Whether that be a location dart, whether that be a guiding light from the sky, even paint shells from the rays. They will use everything they can to clear out this close corner and force you back. And they need to. They need to if they want to get in on site. Alternatively, one that I found that has worked a few times in practice is this angle here. Because for some reason, at the very least down in the depths of gold, no one likes to check this angle. When you're pushing on in while attacking, you're very much going to see anyone to your close right. You're going to be able to see connectors in mid. You may even get to see back sight. Close left, you will more than likely start throwing down your util. But no one will ever check here for some reason. And when you're trying to scan from here, you might just catch the top of your opponent's head right from here.
Right here.
Just a bit of food for thought there. So a high line is somewhere that it doesn't allow the defenders the attackers any real room to push. So they may try and claim the orb. It may be a case that you just have to straight up let them claim that orb. Everyone else should be trying to play far back, and by far back, my favorite angle to hold is definitely this angle right here. As someone who likes to main Sova, a Sova dart is very, very useful on a map like this. So it'll be able to, awful dart to use, for example, but sometimes getting a dart into window or even right up towards main. Anywhere from there can clear it out and maybe force people to bait themselves out. And you also have that, maybe the bliss of cover of hiding behind this wall. Now, when hiding behind this wall, you still can be exposed to flashes, to guiding lights, to any real util, but you have more freedom to fall back. So in that small split second, in the time it takes you to jump and move, you'll end up being covered. You will be covered perfectly safe. You won't be exposed when you're trying to fall on back. You can try your best to get on back here, even using the pillar as cover. A lot of the time then on Breeze, it can be about retaking as a team, but you want to hold your attackers off for as long as you can, so maybe toy with that as you will. So then at the start of the round, mid control can be big on Breeze, purely because it will kind of cut off any real flow of attack really, and it can also cut off any flow of defense. I think what I haven't seen too much in any real, I'll say quote unquote competitive play, is the quick claim of mid control. So as soon as this barrier goes down, which is I believe somewhere around here, you can hope to see some players may try to move to get a more advanced angle, somewhere where they're going to try and feed for more information, or at least try and, I don't know, cut off the blood flow going into any of these areas. But it's not exactly something you see every day of the week. When defending personally, while I'm a Sova here, I could recommend getting as close as, well, maybe even as close as here, where you're not exactly exposed to any opponents from top mid, but you can use your L drone, try and clear out from the inside, or you can try and clear above this wall and catch anyone still lurking through mid. Your recon dart, for the same reason, can be used somewhere in mid. Just feed for any info. You're going to catch anyone up behind this pillar right here. And who knows, maybe it can be the deciding factor that'll get you a kill. For the same reason, exact same angle, exact same idea. If you wanted to get this far down to use your drone, or if you want to wait inside off this cubby here in defender side spawn, just to try and feed for any info, you do it. Info is everything really very early on in Breeze. Because a lot of the time, if a team does 5-stack and try and roll their way into a site, it could be serious trouble. So for here, I'd recommend, if you're, again, for a Sova main, darting on out, trying to get any info from anywhere on this backline behind the pillar, or even for the same reason, droning from here and just trying to find anyone in mid. Easy peasy. I'm going to talk a bit more about the setups that you should use, maybe as regards an agent pool for Breeze in a few moments, but for the time being, what I'm going to talk about here is that you might want to underman this part of the map. I think a Killjoy can be very handy to have the turret placed right here, staring all the way out. It can cut off all the blood flow and stop anyone from really moving on in without any real info. Even dropping it right here will cut people off from getting any control they really want. Same thing applies. You cannot hold a high line, I find. When you hold a high line, you're very much exposed and you could be in a situation where you're only good for one. You can trade yourself, which is just about enough, but you always want to do that bit more for your team. Angles like this, or this, or even this aren't really going to help out your team the way you want it to. You may be good for one good pick, but any good team is going to clear their close corners and they're going to get into sight very, very quickly. And it will be that much harder to retake sight, especially when your team lose one man. The two spots I recommend for holding this site is to use these boxes here for one, because they're not exactly in the open, they're very much covered by the two pyramids, and you can get a Sova recon dart somewhere into main with a bounce, and it will still feed players away. It'll give all the info you need there inside of the tunnels, I believe. Is that tunnels? Cave. Another angle then, for the same reason you can hold, is on these stairs. If you hold crouch on these stairs, you have a small little head peek area that some players won't be able to see. You'll end up being just a small pixel on their screen as they're entering into a cave. Sometimes the only real counter to that would end up being a Viper wall, which it's not exactly something you can counter too easily, but that's where you want to use your sentinels, which I'm going to talk about more in this video. The final angle that I believe can be held on A is an op angle, I'd want to call it. This is an angle you want to use only if you're going to rock with an operator. Will be up here on bridge, looking on down into A side, being able to cut off anyone who's going to try and plant, and this is going to be what it'll be picked out. You'll have the info there, provided you do have a teammate set up on the stairs by switch. It's that simple. Defending isn't the easiest thing to do on Breeze, but it can be done efficiently. One of the things I talk to a lot of the people I play with the most is their use of connectors, because the connectors on Breeze can be so vital. So you have anywhere in this long, narrow archway, all the way down towards rope, can all be yours normally if a team is going to commit to site. I find it's very rare that a team commit to ropes here unless mid control is their sole priority, their sole target. So by use of connectors, when you're trying to rotate off of A towards B, you have your doors, you have mid-nest, and you can also use the trap door here towards the bottom of hull, as well as CT. Of course, CT is the more conventional route, of course, but then again, it's very predictable. And in a game like Valorant, you do not want to be predictable. And of course, I didn't even mention, you could also just go for the hard flank and go the whole way out the back, all the way here, past caves and through spawn. But again, that much I'd also say is somewhat predictable in a sense. For the same reason, if you're on B side and you get a okay, your opponents are on A and they're planting, or they're getting ready to plant, you have two options here really. I might find that you don't really want to push out of main because you may get caught out by a lurker, but definitely through tunnel or CT are your two options. But better side, if you go through CT, you also have your choices. I think this is a choice that a few people have to make very early on, whether they want to go down through defender side spawn under bridge, or maybe they may try and get some work done through the connectors here in the tunnel. They'll have a lot of work to do here if they want to use this trapdoor. Of course, this trapdoor is an alright idea until you open the door and it makes the loudest noise possible, so it doesn't make it too discreet of a job. Now, I've been tossing and turning on what I think is the perfect idea of the perfect composition that you want to use on a map like Breeze, but I think I've got an idea of what the perfect composition is. So the composition that I think works best runs no duelist. It's a Skye, a Viper, an Astra, a Sova, and a Killjoy. I think the best way for me to explain this is to show you it through one of these Strat screens, just to kind of give you an idea of how I think it would work in principle. So let's start off on A side, and I think one of the necessities that you may need for a map like Breeze is a Killjoy. Now, the reason I say that is, it's to hold off one of those extra angles. To have the Killjoy sat here on A site, this is behind the boxes that I showed you before, would mean it allows for a Killjoy to have an alarm bot down inside, just inside of sight in towards pyramids, and for his turret to sit up and holding the tunnel. It holds the top of the tunnel on its own, and it allowed the Astra here to be able to feed back and swing if she needs to. Nano swarms, I've given 2 temporary nano swarms here. They can be pre-placed or used post-plant, just fully depending on the team you come up against, but it could be solid in that regard. Now for the Sova, I've shown a recon dart down here towards the bottom right of your screen. Purpose of that being, can try and feed for any information for anyone coming through shop or through cave. Just holds them out like any, well, holds them, it should, or it'll give the information that a Sova really seeks for that early on in a round. Also, he can hold that, I want to call it like a head glitch angle, purely because it's just that small little pixel where you're able to aim from, looking on down in towards pyramids on sight. Now, the agent I have here is an Astra, and I reckon the Astra suits this one best, being middle of the map, being able to either A, swing off the turret's contact, and be able to try and look down through mid-nest for any info, just maybe jiggling it, looking for anyone coming in left side of pillar, up through mid-stack or in through mid-top. At the same time, I do have here on the B side a Viper wall. That is going to be the Viper's toxic screen. I have it down here roughly. I don't have the best gauging for it here. I think it's just from inside the tunnel down towards mid doors. That will give you all the cover that you possibly need through the middle of the map. Some players will be reluctant to walk through a Viper's toxic screen. Others won't be. Some may wait here at the bottom of mid for that Viper's wall to eventually crash down and maybe try and make the move through mid-wood doors. But to counter that, that's when I believe a Sova can use a Zell drone and try and feed for any info there if they're still waiting on that crucial info. The other agent I have that I haven't mentioned here is the Sky, who I believe should sit at the back of B side, maybe using a guiding light here in towards main, can catch anyone out coming in towards elbow or through window. All a process, all about waiting. Of course, the Sky can have 3 of those flashes just to use at any given point. I think those 5 agents are 5 that can most definitely hold and defend well on a map like Breeze, because Breeze, I remind you, is not easy. It's all about long angles, and a lot of these agents, I believe 3 of them here that I want to say at the very least, are all about info. You have your Sky, who's guiding lights to give you the info. You have your recon dart from the Sova that also gives you info, and not to mention that the Killjoy's turret through mid-hull also gives you any information on any opponents who are trying to get that control. I've offered a few alternatives really that you can use, maybe instead of some of these agents, if they're not agents that you're exactly comfortable using. One of them I have here is the Breach, who I'd like to note his is a flashpoint. That's the name of his flashes. They can be used for the same reason that a Sky can be used, but of course you want to use your natural delay and you don't want to swing, and you may want to position yourself behind pillar at most times just so you can get max value for your flashes. Another one here, instead of the Astra, you could use an Omen, which again in competitive compositions hasn't exactly been used too often now. Purely it seems to be phased out just by Astra's versatility. But again, it can be used as a replacement, but I think that the Astra is just levels above the Omen. If you haven't taken your time to learn Astra already, now is the perfect time to do so. Otherwise here, I've mentioned a Sage here instead of the Sova. It can be done. I reckon walling mid doors and holding the same angle can hold the exact same information needed, but that would mean that you need someone maybe jiggling here through the middle of pyramid trying to get the same info that the Sova dart may have got earlier on in the round. And then I've also mentioned that a Cypher could step in instead of a Killjoy, maybe with tripwires or with a Cypher cam on the back of this side here. Let me just slap up the spy cam. If you wanted to slap a spy cam here, hell no. If you want to set up a spy cam here and maybe tripwires through doors or even through the entrance to site, anything like that could work and could still get the same relevant info that you want early on in the round. Those are the deciding factors on what will win a round for you as a player really in Valorant, and those are the things that you need early on. So if they have information, then let's just look at this from the agents that I picked out already. So I'll drag these 4 off of screen here momentarily. But if we want to look at the 5 agents that I've set out here, so I'm going to give hypothetical scenarios. If a team is to rush B, my recommendation is the Viper will throw up her wall, will throw her snake bites down into the entrance. The Astra will pop her smoke here on B side, and maybe the Sky will use her wolf, do anything she can from backside to try and just hold people back, just buy a little bit more time. It may end up costing her life, may end up in a 5v4, but she can try and trade herself at the very least. In that time then, hopefully, the Astra will be able to fall back through arches, the Sova will be able to try and come in through mid-nest again, and the Killjoy, if she so pleases, can either flank through mid-wood doors, through CT, or try and join the Sova going in through mid-nest. Then, if there's information that it may be more of a mid-stack here, maybe the Astra has swung, jiggled, and got the info she needed while the Viper's wall was still up, then what I heavily recommend is that the Sova drones early. The Sova's going to try and drone as early as he can, try and get any info that he can get just to hold people back. Even when the people see the L drone, more than likely they're going to try and move, or they're going to try and just alpha up and try and shoot it down straight away. Sometimes it can get one or two, it might get a tag, but it might get some info then just from the drone itself. It'll catch people up on the minimap, people will be able to see it for themselves. In that instance then, I recommend the Killjoy also maybe changes her angle, her POV, and starts watching wood doors for the same reason the Sova maybe can hold this high angle at the top of stairs. If they were going mid towards this tunnel here, same thing sort of applies. You still want your Astra jiggling mid-nest, just trying to hold them on back. May end up getting traded, may end up getting a pick, that's just the game. Your Viper will have her wall. I hope that she'll also be able to throw down her poison orb just in front of the tunnel, and maybe have her snake bite again to hold anyone out that you need to, just to buy your defenders time to rotate and gamble onto the other side. The Sky as well can still sit here at the back of B back, but will have to hold this long angle and watch the smoke, well, the Viper's poison orb as it is popped. Finally then, what I'd recommend to do then, if it was on A site, the Sova can, well, if they get news that it is going to be a hard push onto A site, the nanoswarms, you want to activate them early enough. It'll delay the plant even by 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds, which can normally be enough to allow one player to get from here down as far as here. It can be somewhat deciding. It can be a deciding factor in a retake. Now, in that instance then, what I do recommend is that you have your Sova stay on his peak right here, still trying to get whatever taps he can get. The Killjoy to stay on site. The Astra can then look and jiggle from bridge. The Viper can try and lurk in through mid, then through mid-wood doors. And then the Sky has the freedom to choose what she wants to do. I would say try tunnel through mid-nest, maybe through arches, but that's not for me to call. I think someone like a Sky on the day will be able to call it for themselves what they think might be the most effective method in taking it in a team like this, because normally post-plant you will have players trying to hide anywhere they can inside of cave. You have a point right here that I won't be able to show you here. You have another point right here and here. 3 different access points really that players can swing you from, and sometimes it can be a bit much if you have Sovas with shock dart lineups or a Viper with those snakebite lineups. It's not ideal, but you can still try to play to counter it. You can try and get players to force their way in towards cave to try and take it down. Playing retake isn't easy on Breeze, but it's definitely doable. So I'm going to try and do these a little bit differently. This is more of like a how-to series, but I'm also going to show you how to attack on Breeze at some point or another. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy what you're watching. I'm trying to show more like analytical stuff to do with Valorant, and I'm finding it fun. So yeah, I'll catch you in the next video, which I believe will be hopefully in a few days' time. Peace.